Imagine waking up to read these headlines. A high-profile financier's carriage is violently ambushed on a country road. A major city locks its gates to stop an advancing plague. And out at sea, a brutal mutiny leaves a ship's owner cast adrift. These stories all appeared on a single sheet of paper, the November 10th, 1720 edition of the American Weekly Mercury. News in the 18th century was carried by merchants and sailors into tavern taprooms and coffeehouses, bridging the physical distance between the American frontier and the centers of European power. On this specific Thursday in Philadelphia, readers opened this broadsheet to find a world gripped by sudden violence, shifting borders, and the threat of total economic collapse. The international dispatches begin with a report of political violence from France. A famous financier known as Mr. Law narrowly survived an ambush on his carriage while traveling the high road. The attack was bizarrely precise. The coachman and horses were shot, but once the attackers realized Mr. Law wasn't actually inside the carriage, they allowed the 4 remaining passengers to go free without further harm. To the right, the paper tracks a different threat, an infection spreading from Marseille toward the French frontiers. Geneva responded with total mobilization, deploying armed guards, cutting communication, and forcing merchants into a 40-day quarantine, enforced under pain of death. These stories show a continent on high alert, where political assassins and biological pathogens were both moving along the very same trade routes that fueled the economy. Closer to home, there was a brief window of optimism. Reports from New England noted that local indigenous populations were meeting with colonial commissioners to settle their differences through diplomacy. But that peace was eclipsed by news from the Caribbean of a great mortality sweeping the region. The outbreak struck the highest colonial ranks. The governors of Suriname and Curaçao were both dead, leaving the region's administration in total disarray. For the readers of the Mercury, this was the constant friction of colonial life, attempting to build a stable home while watching the world's most powerful authorities fall to an invisible enemy. On the ocean, the struggle for control was even more direct. A Spanish privateer captured an English sloop, the Deborah, off the Capes, and installed a prize crew to sail her away. But the English crew bided their time. In a sudden, violent reversal, they surprised their captors and retook the ship by force. The paper details a horrific Philadelphia mutiny trial for Moses Shepherd. Found guilty of leaving the ship's owner adrift, the judge described the crime as being of so horrid and black a nature, requiring the most severe response. The sentence was designed to be a public warning. The mutineers were sentenced to stand in a pillory for 2 hours, with their ears nailed to the wood, followed by a series of public whippings across the city. Because maritime trade was the absolute lifeblood of the colonies, the state met high seas anarchy with brutal, performative violence to ensure the economic order was maintained. This newspaper is more than a list of random events. It is a map of a world that was already deeply, dangerously connected. A shock to the markets in Paris or a fever in the Caribbean didn't stay local. They moved across these trade lines, eventually arriving on the docks of Philadelphia. From the guards at the gates of Geneva to the pillory in the Philadelphia market, these pages capture a world of institutions desperately hammering at a chaotic reality to force it into a manageable shape. We consume our news differently today, but the experience remains the same, a daily attempt to make sense of a world that feels like it's moving faster than we can track.
The Daily Dispatch, history in print.